The country will this week mark Reconciliation Day on the 16th of December, a commemorative day rooted in our painful and conflict-scarred past, but now invested with the nation's hopes for unity and healing. As the country continues to grapple with inequality, political polarization, and unresolved historical wounds, the question of what the actual content of our reconciliation project is remains as relevant and urgent as ever. So let's examine whether the ideals of nation building still hold sway in a society facing new and old divisions. I'm joined by veteran journalist and thought leader Mathata Tsedu and advocate Sipho Mantula, Pan-African researcher, human rights lawyer, and media analyst, to unpack all of that, unpacking the state of reconciliation in 2025. But before we get into the conversation with the two of them, let us listen to what some South African citizens had to say about Reconciliation Day.
Reconciliation Day is very important. It's very important, but as much as apartheid is way away from us, like hurry free at all. Like, for example, most landlords go around us, actually, they are owned by white people. We have also the companies, a lot of companies that are owned by white people. So as much as Reconciliation Day is an important day, we're not like really free. It's about freedom, it's all about freedom, but we're not really free. So that's my opinion on Reconciliation Day.
I feel like our generation doesn't even consider it. We don't know the importance of what Reconciliation Day is. So for me, on my side, I'm part of the new generations, the 2Ks, they say. So I don't even know about it. I just know I'm going out and enjoying my life. So yeah.
I don't think it really matters anymore. I think basically we've moved on from a lot of things in South Africa. My most important thing is uniting with the thing. I'll give you a little bit of a background. I've actually been in African countries. I've been in 20 different African countries, and I think that we've moved on from the actual meaning of reconciliation. If we can unite in this country, we don't need a specific day to have people or celebrate something where people reconciliate, because I think that happens on a daily basis.
As communities and from different tribes, we have to unite and forget of what our tribe come across in the past. So I can say it's still relevant to me because I'm able to go, for example, to go and study at the University of Cape Town. There are different tribes there. I'm Tsonga, so nkota kusuka ka Nkuzani near Cape Town in vulavula tixaka tin'wanyana and using different language. So I think skahle tani hi vanhu ku va hi kha hi vulavula hi rivala ka leswi nga humelela khale.
Reconciliation Day is that apartheid. They said we reconciled on apartheid, but we really didn't reconcile on apartheid. We are free out here, but we're not necessarily free. Let's look at our workspaces. Let's look up at our landlords. It's still one thing. They still owned by it. We can look at UJ. It was called Rao before, now it's UJ. But literally, if you just go there and look at all the lectures, you only find 20% they're black people and the rest of them, they're white people. Why? It's because there's not reconciliation. We didn't reconcile anything with apartheid. And as for us, the youth, we do it as a drinking day and having fun out there. But most of the time, we should just sit down and really reconcile with our own selves with the fact that how are we going to make it better? Yes.
My views on Reconciliation Day is that it's a day of mending, right? So historically, black people and white people used to have problems, right? Racial issues, right? You can say there are still racial issues between black and white people because black people are still in groups. White people move in groups. There are white cliques. Black people, there are black cliques. It's rare that there are black and white friends, things like that. So I think we still need to work on that, right? Yeah, we need to work on becoming one nation, rainbow nation, more like interracial relationships, interracial friendships, things like that, right? So I think, yeah, as a nation, we still need to work.
Do you see that happening?
Do I see that happening? I I think there's hope for us. We can do it. You know, I think we can do it. It's just that people need to remove stigmas from their heads, like that black and white people can be friends. At the end of the day, we're all human. So I think we can do it. There's hope. There's hope.
Okay, my views on Reconciliation Day are, I think it's a day where we as a nation, we celebrate the apartheid that used to be there long back. So it's there to celebrate the forgiveness or to make amends with what had happened in the past. So we're just looking back at things that used to be there in the back. So I think we're just supposed to be united on that day and moving forward as well. Whether you're black, colored, Indian, white, it's just a matter of us being united as a nation, because as a nation we cannot move forward if there's still racism, whether in this country or wherever, even outside this country. So I feel like it's a big step towards the nation, though there is still racism out there, but at least it's not as big as it used to be back then. But I think maybe we are moving forward towards racism, and I love us as the black people. Now we stand our ground. We now know when there is racism and when there isn't. But I feel like we need to make it more aware to the young and to the youth why we celebrate Reconciliation Day.
All right, so those were the views of some people that we encountered on the streets and just engaged them on what Reconciliation Day means for them. And in the main, it's really composed of young people, and that makes for a fascinating glimpse into how they understand these matters. In fact, let me pick up on that theme. Mathata, Tsedu, let me start with you. Just listening to those young people on the streets in various cities, what's your sense of how they are grappling with and understanding the importance and value of reconciliation as one of the many projects that we said we would undertake when we formed this nation?
I mean, thank you, Tulas. For me, as I was listening to them, was hearing young people grappling with a very serious problem. And some of them are defining it quite in a very narrow and shallow way. But in reality, reconciliation, at the root of reconciliation, it's a wrong that was perpetrated at some point that needs to be corrected. So you need to define what the wrong was and what the reconciliation then would be. That would make amends for the wrong that was done. And in our case, the main problem is really that in 1652, some 3 ships arrived here. People got off the ships, took our land, and we are where we are now. So if there is going to be any reconciliation, it has to be in a way that then undoes the first mistake that was done, which was to take our land. The process of the TRC and the negotiations that happened at Kempton Park produced a solution, which was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which embedded its understanding on the basis that the problem was apartheid, and therefore the people who were just trying to stop people from fighting should be forgiven, which is really what Archbishop Desmond Tutu's commission did. But it did not go beyond that, because in any case, the architect of those negotiations had ruled out the possibility of the land being given back to the people from whom it was taken. So reconciliation will not happen until that realization sinks in. And these kids that you were talking to on the streets of our country will continue to grapple with the reality of being free but not free, being in charge but they are staying in places that are owned by white people, and there are no black people who actually own these flats that they are staying in, and they are grappling with understanding why is that so, and the reason is what I was explaining.
Yeah, Sipho, Mantula, let me bring you in as well. So just listening to those young people, as Mathata says, it's at the point at which they interface with the dynamics that define reconciliation for them. So it's more personal experiences that for them define whether or not reconciliation is happening. But how does it square up with the broader project that the country was always going to undertake and some of the themes that these young people are raising? How do they feature in this conversation about reconciliation?
Afternoon, Tulas, and thank you, and good afternoon to Ntate Tsedu. Tulas, if you look at the theme of this year and saying how do you reconcile, how do you reaffirm the present generation and the future generation of knowing the historical contestation of that day, Tulas, 16 December. Just for me is that to understand the historical context, but move to the 21st century in 2025 of the young people lacking understanding of the past and the present and not be able to can navigate the future. If you look at the past, that injustices that were being committed to us against the black people, against the African communities, and this question of beyond reconciliation but reparation, where does this notion stand? And secondly, when you look to us at the highly contested day, like I was saying earlier, it is the question of also of the narrative that either comes from our education curriculum, that comes from the media narrative, that comes also from the legal context, because when you talk of this project, Tulas, Ntate Tsedu was talking about the TRC. Me and you, we know already there is a commission that is probing the fault lines of the TRC. But before that, you had a context of that there was a law that was talking about promoting national reconciliation. And that law to us gave birth to what we are talking about to say, this day used to be contested, whether it was Dingan's day, was it the day of the vow, but come to the present reality of the young people that they are still struggling to understand that there was a project of dehumanizing the African body and soul. And there was an erasure of the struggles and the victories that Africans have waged against all the challenges and all the struggles that they were facing. So it is very important to us, as this being a last, for the year being a national commemorative day, but there is no clear context. Even if it is being commemorated in a museum, you ask yourself, are our young people aware of their cultural heritage? Are they aware of their linguistic power that they have in narrating their own history? And that's where I will feel to us that there are still battle of ideas, there are still contestation around 16 December, politically, culturally, spiritually. And that's how when we get into the context of this day, it is important we look at building the future in this country and in this continent.
Right, Sipho, let me stick with you for a moment. There's something that you raised that I think you should develop, a theme that I think you should develop further, the importance of reparation and I suppose justice by extension. Is there enough of an acceptance that justice and reparation are part of a holistic and complete conversation about reconciliation? Or are we at a point where now more and more any talk of that, the damage done by the past, by a segregated past and oppressive past, is now seen as more of a perpetual grievance, a kind of sense that says, when will we stop talking about that?
Tulas, we cannot, because what you said earlier, to repair that damage, you have to accept. And once you accept, you have to repair that damage. It's an acknowledgement, actually. And for me, is that if you want to talk about the healing of the wounds, building a post-apartheid nation, Tulas, we have to look that this will always be the subject of debate in every corner of this country, that did we really got what we have fought for many years? And secondly, when you look at that role of transitional justice mechanisms where we had to put the TRC, we had to have the Chapter 9 institution as the building blocks. Again, for me, Tulas, I see that there were building blocks that post-1995, we did not really emphasize on them. We don't see the emphasis that reconciliation is not only a national event or a provincial event, it is a stage and a process of also exercising what people like Sobukwe will have said, Biko will have said, about this concept of human race, this concept of not being on the sideline, not being the spectators of what we are seeing today. And that's where you find the youth, the lack of knowledge and ignorance that creeps into the youth of not understanding this, the failure of the justice system not to understand that even the failed TRC amnesty hearings told us that we did not even prosecute those who committed atrocities of the 1960 Sharpeville, the 1976 June 16, as it will be turning 50 years in 2026. So you ask yourself, Tulas, all these things will be lingering, but we need to exercise this, but we build on what I have said earlier. Reparation, transitional justice also encompasses this reconciliatory mood that we want to preach in this country.
Mathata, let me turn to you and ask you about whether or not we continue to be intentional about fostering reconciliation as a nation. Some of the lengths to which we have gone in that quest for reconciliation, I mean, you can't legislate reconciliation, but we gave it a good shot, having an actual act that was called Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation, which gave birth to the TRC. That's on the one end of the spectrum, but there were also the symbolic gestures, the retention of certain symbols, the Springboks, and other, monuments that were retained that are significant for one segment of our society. Fort Rucker Monument comes to mind, while at the same time having those that sort of talk to the journey of other segments of society. Do we continue to be intentional in that way? And what does that look like in 2025?
Well, I serve on the Council of the South African National Heritage Resource Agency. It's called SARA, which deals with heritage issues. So what you are touching on now is something that preoccupies us quite a lot. What do you do with all these guys on horseback and guns at the entrance of every town when there is nothing that says black people live here in terms of symbolism in that town? So that is a struggle that also needs to be waged. But when you look at December 16, for example, you were talking to Sipho about reparations and justice. The absence of the word justice in that act, the National Unity and Reconciliation Act, it's symbolic of the intention not to have justice as part of the equation. In fact, there was an organization that went to court to say this whole thing is going to mean justice cannot happen, and they were thrown out of court. The reconciliation will not happen because there is a day that has been renamed as Reconciliation Day. It needs the people who are guilty of some crime to acknowledge their crime and make amends against that crime or for that crime. Until we get to that and there is economic justice for everybody in the country, when those kids that you were interviewing will then be able to say, it's not really about whether I can make friendship with a white person or not, but where I am, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Until we get to that point, we are not getting anywhere. Reconciliation will remain a buzzword that we get back to every December 16th.
All right. On that sobering note, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Mathata Tsedu is a veteran journalist and also thought leader, and we were talking to Advocate Sipho Mantula as well, a Pan-African researcher, human rights lawyer, and media analyst.